The night had fallen heavy over the plains, that kind of blackness only the desert knows, moonless, starless, where even the horizon disappears and the world feels like it has shrunk to the size of your lantern's glow. John Baylor, a weary rancher with a scar on his cheek and calluses on his hands, was shutting the barn door when he heard the faintest sound, a stumble, a sharp intake of breath carried by the wind. His land was lonely, miles from the nearest neighbor, and sounds in the dark usually meant trouble, coyotes, rustlers, or worse. His hand hovered near the shotgun propped by the barn wall. But what he saw when he turned toward the sound was nothing he could have braced for. A woman, barefoot, her dress torn, her long dark hair matted with dust, stood unsteady in the shadows of the corral. The lantern light caught her face, proud yet pale with exhaustion. She looked as though she had walked through fire and storm both, yet she held herself with a dignity that made John lower his hand from the gun. Her voice was faint, broken by thirst, but the words were clear enough, "Help me." John stepped forward, his instincts at war inside him. He recognized the features, the high cheekbones, the eyes that glinted with fierce endurance. Apache. The word alone could stir fear in most settlers, for raids had scarred these lands and left trails of bitterness on both sides. And yet here she was, alone, pleading. He could have turned her away, could have told her to keep walking into the night. It would have been the safer choice. But something deeper than fear gripped him, the memory of his wife, dead 3 winters ago, who had once told him, "A stranger's need is God's test for our hearts." Without a word, he took her arm gently and guided her inside. He set her by the fire, fetched water, and gave her bread. She ate slowly, each bite trembling between gratitude and desperation. When she finally met his eyes again, she whispered, "I am wife of Cochise, chief of the Chiricahua." John froze. The name carried weight like thunder. Cochise was a leader both feared and respected, his people warriors who would fight to their last breath to protect their own. For a heartbeat, John felt the ground shift beneath him. To harbor this woman was to invite death upon himself. But when he looked at her, shivering by the firelight, he saw not the wife of a chief nor the emblem of a tribe, but a human soul battered by suffering. His decision, once made, was unshakable. "You'll stay here tonight," he said quietly. "No harm will touch you under my roof." She slept by the hearth, and John sat awake through the long hours, staring into the flames, torn between unease and a strange peace. Dawn came with a silence too perfect to last. The cattle were restless, the air heavy. Then, as the sun broke over the ridge, the horizon darkened, not with storm clouds but with riders. They came in waves, like the desert itself had sprouted warriors. 200, maybe more, fanned across the land. Their ponies kicked up dust, their spears glinted, their cries pierced the morning. John's throat tightened. He knew what it meant. Cochise had come for his wife. The warriors encircled the ranch, the earth trembling under their hooves. Arrows notched, rifles gleamed. John stood tall on his porch, the woman at his side. She stepped forward before he could speak, raising her hand. A ripple passed through the warriors as they recognized her. Murmurs spread, respect, relief, something close to reverence. And then the circle parted, and Cochise himself rode forward. Tall, formidable, eyes like burning coals, he dismounted with a grace that belied his power. He looked from his wife to John, his expression unreadable. A single gesture from him could unleash a storm of vengeance that would erase John's name from the earth. But instead, the chief stepped closer, silent, waiting. It was John who spoke, his voice steady though his heart thundered. "She came here in need. I gave her shelter. No harm was meant, and no harm will come from me." Cochise studied him for a long, heavy moment. Then he turned to his wife, who nodded faintly, her eyes soft with gratitude. The chief's face shifted, the hardness melting into something rare, a flicker of respect. He placed a hand on John's shoulder, firm as stone yet not unkind. "You chose mercy when fear would have chosen otherwise," Cochise said. For this, you are no enemy. The warriors lowered their weapons. A silence swept the land, not of menace but of recognition. In that moment, John understood something he had never let himself believe: the divide between them was not destiny. It was choice. Choice to see one another as human, to answer need with compassion rather than hate. Cochise and his people left with his wife, but before he mounted, the chief spoke once more. You have given back more than my wife's life. You have shown my people that honor still walks among the settlers. We do not forget such things. And they didn't. Word of that day spread in quiet whispers across the frontier, through campfires and towns alike. Some dismissed it as myth, others clung to it as proof that kindness could survive even in the harshest lands. For John, it was no legend but a simple truth, that one act of compassion can change the course of lives, even the course of history. He returned to his solitude, his ranch unchanged in shape but forever altered in spirit. When he walked his land, he did so with a lighter heart, knowing he had faced a choice that could have defined him by fear, yet instead defined him by humanity. And sometimes, in the distance, he swore he could see riders on the horizon, never threatening, but watching, remembering. Years later, when John's own time came to fade into the earth he had tilled, neighbors and strangers alike told the story of the day the rancher sheltered the Apache chief's wife, and 200 warriors came not for vengeance but for gratitude. They told it not as a tale of war but of mercy, not as a story of enemies but of human hearts meeting across the canyon of mistrust. And so the legend lived, a reminder whispered on desert winds, that kindness, even in the wildest of times, is never wasted.